Good morning. I'm Tom Delk, chaplain at Normandy Farms Estates, just north of Philadelphia. Linguists tell us that here in Pennsylvania there are 5 distinct English dialects with different accents, vocabulary, and even distinct grammar. That's 2 more than the average state, by the way. There's Philly, Pittsburgh, Erie, Pennsylvania Dutch, and Northern Tier. In Philly, yous can get a hoagie and a can of soda or just a bottle of water. In Erie, you can get a can of pop. In Pittsburgh, yins can go downtown, that's downtown, and see a Steelers game in that. We're now in the season of Pentecost, and it starts on the day that Christians celebrate the coming of the Holy Spirit and the beginning of the church. The celebration is rooted in the Hebrew festival of first fruits, the first harvest of wheat in the spring. That's in Numbers 28, otherwise known as the Feast of Weeks. 7 weeks or 50 days after Passover. Pilgrims who had come and taken that trip to Jerusalem for Passover would often stay there till Pentecost. And this explains the large international crowd who heard the commotion from the upper room when the disciples, about 120 of them, spilled out and shared what had just happened. You can read all about that in the second chapter of the book of Acts. Now, when pilgrims arrived at the temple, they would hear the ancient Hebrew liturgy and prayers in language that was no longer in common use. Here is the miracle of that day. The disciples spoke of what God had done, but in a native common languages of their hearers, languages they hadn't learned. It was a miracle of communication. People were able to listen, speak, and understand what they had never understood before. They were also able to hear people to whom they had never listened. But not everyone. There were some who didn't hear and just figured that the babblers were drunk, dismissing them as a bunch of rednecks from Galilee on a bender. There are always some who are content to dismiss the unexpected in order to keep their stereotypes intact. Now, the day of Pentecost is the undoing of what happened at the Tower of Babel back in Genesis. In Acts, the people who had been scattered came back together and miraculously understood each other again. This tells us a great deal about the work of the Spirit, communication, and as a result, community, cross-cultural, tribal, political, and all kinds of social barriers, is the DNA of this new movement. Heaven had come to them. Now they would build a community where love would reign. This, of course, isn't the only note that Pentecost sounds, but it was the beginning of something extraordinary, a healing of division, and an open door to many who had previously felt shut out. I pray for a miracle like this in our time, better yet, a fresh manifestation of this miracle of Pentecost. Come, Holy Spirit.